Having devoted a segment of the Patton episode to the subject of George Patton, it only seemed fair to give his colleague Omar Bradley a similar treatment in the episode on the Bradley IFV. So here goes, folks. It's quite the contrast to the gilded life of Patton, and the ending is a lot happier too. Omar Bradley was born in 1893 in Randolph County, Missouri. His father, John Bradley, was a schoolteacher who grew crops to supplement the family income. It's said the senior Bradley never earned more than $40 in a month. They never owned a wagon, a horse, or a mule. Despite his poverty, John Bradley was obviously an intelligent man and named Omar for a newspaper editor he admired. He taught his son to play baseball, hand-carving his bats, how to read and write, and how to hunt and shoot. This proud, hardscrabble life took its toll, and John Bradley died when Omar was 14 years old on 31 January 1908 from pneumonia related to walking 6 miles to work every day in the middle of winter. John Bradley was 40 years old. Sarah Bradley is on the public record as having worked as a seamstress and took in boarders to make ends meet. Both of these activities are often used as shorthand for sex work, and while we don't know for sure, it's hard to be critical of what a mother will do to feed her children. Any which way you cut it, times were tough for the Bradley family. Despite this, Omar did well in high school, both as a student and athlete. There in Moberly, Missouri, he met his future wife, Mary Quayle, at the local church and in high school. They would stay together until her death in 1965, while he rose from being a poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks to a globe-straddling warlord. Quite the contrast to the messy love lives of certain other generals. After graduating high school, Omar Bradley worked as a boilermaker for the Wabash Railroad. This job paid the princely sum of 17 cents an hour, or $5.74 in today's money. He was trying to save to attend the University of Missouri. Just how much you can put away for college while earning 17 cents an hour is a bit of a mystery, but at this point, fate intervened. The Missouri congressional appointment to West Point in 1911 had been put out to a public exam process. Bradley's Sunday school teacher, John Cruson, sought him out and encouraged him to apply. Omar decided against it because he hadn't studied algebra in 3 years, and one of the competitors was known to have been studying full-time for a year for the exam, and also because he couldn't afford to travel to the exam hall in St. Louis. Now, I'm reading somewhere between the lines, but some motivated mentors appear to have intervened because the Wabash Railway provided him with free travel to St. Louis, and he did take the exam. He was not able to finish all the questions in the allotted time. Despite this, he finished second in the exams, and the winner declined the placement. Omar Bradley received a telegram on 27 June 1911 informing him he had 4 days to report to West Point. He finished 44th in his class with letters in football and baseball. He also found time to play baseball in local semi-pro leagues, strictly as an amateur to conform with West Point's rules, and reportedly could have turned pro if the Army wasn't calling. He graduated West Point in 1915 as part of the class the stars fell on, which is to say it provided the US Army with a great many generals. Perhaps more important, every single player in Bradley's baseball team who stayed in the Army became a general. In 1916, he married Mary in Columbia, Missouri. He spent World War I guarding copper mines in Montana. A planned deployment to Europe with the 19th Division was cut off due to the war ending. In the interwar period, Bradley returned to his love of education in the Army. His wife, it should be noted, had a degree in education combined with his father's passion for the field. While instructing at the US Army Infantry School, George C. Marshall described Bradley as quiet, unassuming, capable, with sound common sense, absolute dependability. Give him a job and forget it. On 20 February 1941, Bradley was made a temporary brigadier, bypassing the rank of colonel, so he could command the US Army Infantry School at Fort Benning. The US Army was getting serious about going to war, and capable, intelligent men who were not dickheads were in high demand. In this role, he developed the officer candidate school model, something he probably had some interesting ideas about when trying to build a new army, given his unusual background. On 15 February 1942, 2 months after US entry into World War II, he was made a Major General. The front line finally called for Bradley in 1943 in North Africa, where he served as Patton's deputy, rebuilding 2 Corps after Kasserine Pass, while also retaining an independent role as Eisenhower's representative. Taking command of 2 Corps in April, Bradley took the surrender of 200,000 Germans and Italians after capturing Bizerte. His performance in North Africa earned him a promotion to Lieutenant General on 2 June 1943, and he took 2 corps to Sicily as part of Operation Husky. It also led Eisenhower to write to Marshall, "There is very little I need to tell you about him, because he is running absolutely true to form all the time. He has brains, a fine capacity for leadership, and a thorough understanding of the requirements of modern battle. He has never caused me one moment of worry. He is perfectly capable of running an army. He has the respect of all his associates, including all the British officers that have met him." His star, or should that be stars, now firmly on the rise, Omar was chosen to lead the US First Army for D-Day, taking his headquarters ashore on 10 June 1944. There is some controversy about his aversion to deploying armour in the landings, as opposed to the British use of Hobart's funnies. I'm prepared to give him a pass here, both because the beaches were less suitable, and also because there were very limited American funnies available, and the complication of adding British vehicles and crews to his force late in the planning would have created their own difficulties. Bradley planned Operation Cobra, the breakout from the beachhead using the strategic bombers to pulverise German lines. When the bombing line wavered, horrific friendly fire ensued, which took the life of Lieutenant General Leslie McNair. Bradley described the scene. "The ground belched, shook and spewed dirt to the sky. Scores of our troops were hit, their bodies flung from slit trenches. Doughboys were dazed and frightened. A bomb landed squarely on McNair in a slit trench and threw his body 60 feet and mangled it beyond recognition except for the 3 stars on his collar." Strategic bombers were not used in a tactical role again in the war, which, given that the tactic was very successful, admittedly at a cost, makes one wonder. As more forces arrived in Normandy, Bradley took command of the 12th Army Group, with his former boss, the aristocratic George Patton, now serving under him. The 12th Army Group would eventually consist of 4 field armies, 43 divisions, and 1.3 million men, the largest group of American troops to serve under a single field commander. Omar Bradley, the Missouri Boilermaker. Bradley was not, however, a perfect general. They don't exist. He allowed the German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army to escape from the Falaise pocket for fear of friendly fire should a British pincer meet an American one going the other way. Given the history of American forces and friendly fire, this is a very well-founded fear, but the truly great generals of history would not have let 2 enemy armies escape distraction. Bradley claimed that ultra-intercepts had led him to believe the Germans had already escaped, but they were wrong, and so was he. He was, however, absolutely spot on when he opposed and objected to the debacle of Operation Market Garden. Another black spot was the Battle of Hurtgen Forest, described as the most ineptly fought series of battles in the war in the West, although blame there must be shared with Courtney Hodges. Bradley was also sidelined in the Battle of the Bulge, with his forces being placed under the temporary command of the British Montgomery, a move which prompted Bradley to resign and Eisenhower to refuse to accept his resignation. March 1945 earned Bradley his 4th star, as Eisenhower had been bumped up to 5 in December 44. Bradley led the first forces to cross the Rhine River into Germany since the Napoleonic Wars by capturing a crucial crossing at Remagen. His force would meet up with the Red Army at the Elbe River. Most famously, Bradley was known as the GI's General, although it's thought that was largely a public relations fiction. A general commanding 1.3 million men would be derelict in his duties if he was personally a buddy to all of them or even a meaningful number of them. He was, however, distinctive with his calmness and courtesy when addressing subordinates. That said, he was more willing to sack poor performers than his colleagues and recommended the death sentences of several soldiers. The end of the Second World War was just the start of Omar Bradley's career, which is really saying something for a 4-star general. From August 1945 to November 1947, he ran the Veterans Administration, improving healthcare and access to education under the GI Bill of Rights. There is a Bradley Room at the Department of Veterans Affairs to this day. In 1948, Bradley became the Army Chief of Staff, remarking that the Army of 1948 could not fight its way out of a paper bag. In August 1949, President Truman made Bradley the first chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, where he had to preside over further cuts to the military and battle the Navy, describing them as fancy Dans who won't hit the line with all they have on every play unless they can call the signals, and who were in open rebellion against the civilian control. On 22nd September 1953, Omar Bradley was made General of the Army, the last man to hold that rank. He was also made the first chairman of the NATO Military Committee, a post he held until 1953. Bradley had to deal with the numerous debacles of the Korean War and is credited with convincing President Truman to sack Douglas MacArthur. I'll just quote Truman's words about sacking Dugout Doug. "I fired him because he wouldn't respect the authority of the president. I didn't fire him because he was a dumb son of a bitch, although he was, but that's not against the law for generals. If it was, half to three-quarters of them would be in jail." Shortly after MacArthur's sacking, Bradley would testify to Congress. "Red China is not the powerful nation seeking to dominate the world. Frankly, in the opinion of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, this strategy would involve us in the wrong war, at the wrong place, at the wrong time, and with the wrong enemy." In 1953, he left active military service, but remained on active duty, in part because he had never amassed any great wealth, and Lord knows he came from none. He refused to take a job with a weapons company, considering that to be unethical, a fine position precious few generals have taken in the years since. This presented a problem to the establishment, as it would be a bad look for a general of the army to be living in poverty. Eventually, a position was found for him as chairman of the board of the Bulova Watch Company, which he held from 1958 to 1973. Mary Bradley died in 1965, and he remarried a year later. The semi-retired Omar Bradley was a long-time member of the Moberly Rotary Club back in Missouri, played golf at the Moberly Country Club, and had a Bradley pew in the Moberly Central Christian Church, where he'd met Mary all those years ago. With the help of ghostwriters, he wrote 2 books, A Soldier's Story and A General's Life. Bradley was a key resource for the writers of the Patton movie when the Patton family denied access to the Patton diaries. His last public appearance was the inauguration of Ronald Reagan in 1981. When he died on 8 April 1981, Omar Bradley concluded a period of active duty begun on 1 August 1911. At 69 years, 8 months and 7 days, it was the longest service in US history. As a young boy myself, living in Washington, D.C. at the time of his death, the ceremony surrounding his funeral made an enduring impression on me. The last of the Fighting Five Stars was a term I remember well from that time. It's a remarkable testimony to the America of the early 20th century. The man of such raw talent could be identified and taken from obscurity and poverty to the very highest ranks of power. I'm not sure many such societies exist today. Omar Bradley was one of the better people we've ever looked at in the course of making this show.